rebooting for the live stream.
Oh,
Not the whole thing, just we're probably being recorded right
so nobody can hear me. Oh, are we ready? Okay. Just want to let everyone know that's trying to watch via live stream, on Saturday. City Hall got hit by lightning and it knocked out all of our, capabilities as far as video streaming. So we are working on getting that repaired and we're doing our best kind of piecemealing things together. So please bear with us for this meeting.
Sure, they speak directly to the mic tonight, so the laptop can pick it up.
Okay, and then the other thing the clerk is just reminding, please everyone speak into your mics so that it'll get picked up by the laptop. All right, now we are going into approval for the June 18th work session minutes. May I have approval, please, or a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
There is, Mayor.
Yes.
The minutes reflect that a discussion took place. I may not have this answer until later, but it occurs to me that I did object to going into that closed door session. And I think the minutes should reflect that.
Okay. So you're adding a motion to that you objected to going into closed session.
Yes,
Or
or raised questions about the closed door session would probably go past.
You voting no?
I did not
But-
vote no.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
says yes.
I don't, yeah, it says yes, so I'm not gonna debate that, because I don't
Right.
remember, but I did raise questions
Mhm.
about whether or not all of the topics that we discuss in closed door session should be in closed door session.
So you made a motion to include that you question the reason for going into closed session.
Yes, that the minutes
Okay.
reflect that.
All right. Any discussion on,
Need a second on that?
oh, second on motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
We have an audio of the. We can go back to check to confirm that.
We didn't do audio since we were doing fully closed that day.
Huh.
But I do recall,
Councilmember-
Councilmember Lavender did raise concerns. I do recall that.
And I,
Mhm.
so that's why I'm comfortable seconding.
Any other comments?
Just can you repeat the motion?
The motion,
You have it, you want me to?
I'll have you repeat it.
Just
Your
a
motion.
statement
Mhm.
that it can be in addition to a discussion took place, that Councilmember Lavender raised questions regarding all of the topics that we have in closed door sessions.
okay, any more questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Back to the motion of passing the minutes as
As amended.
amended. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, minutes carried. The next topic is floodplain ordinance revisions. We got a memo about this and I'm hoping that, because I do not know what a freeboard is, so, somebody needs to explain the increased freeboard requirement.
I'm gonna give a brief introduction. Well, first of all, great to be good evening, Mayor and City Council. Chris Kruger, Public Services Director. Tonight, we'll discuss and review of possible changes, proposed changes to the floodplain management ordinance. And so first off, want to say that Rick attended a Tools of Floodplain Management course through SEMA, which is the State Emergency Management Agency. So he's had training in this. I've been to that training, but my training was about 10 years ago. So I've been through the training, but I definitely know from my past experience the terms in this memo. So first off, as Mayor said, there are some very quite technical terms in here, and so I can address a few of those, and if there are some that we gloss over, or think that, that may not be too technical to us, it would probably be technical to other people, so feel free to speak up if we're saying something that you don't understand. So first off, a floodplain, is a designated area. There's actually two different types of floodplains. It's a 100-year or a 1% chance that that area can flood. There's also a 500-year floodplain. And then you have what's called a floodway. A floodway is all within the floodplain, and that's a defined area inside of the floodplain. And these are certain zones that are shown on maps that are provided by FEMA and SEMA. And so they have to deal with regulations with what can be built in a floodplain and a floodway. Kirkwood is comprised of around 10.6% floodplain. So very a small amount of Kirkwood this would apply to, but where it does apply, it may have some impacts to properties. Record rain numbers, and it affects 1,000 parcels in Kirkwood. And so that is a generous amount, but that represents only 10% of Kirkwood. So some more terms. So the mayor asked what freeboard is. So freeboard is the amount of water above the 100-year elevation. So what our current ordinance refers to is there is 1 foot of freeboard required from that 100-year storm. And to give council a general idea of what a 100-year storm is, in the St. Louis area, it's around 6 to 7 inches of rainfall. So, however, that varies, intensity of rain over year, over a certain time period. There's a lot that goes into that specifically, but in general terms, it's around 7 inches of rainfall. So with that, those are kind of the terms. So we have the National Flood Insurance Program is the NFIP. So currently we are registered in that program that allows homeowners to get flood insurance. And homeowners can buy flood insurance regardless of if they're in the floodplain or not. However, if you have a lien on your property, if you're getting a loan from a bank and you are close to a floodplain, some banks will definitely require flood insurance. But and you're not required to get. Sometimes it's good to have flood insurance because if you're even outside of a creek or away from a creek, because there's other benefits and flood insurance. However, that comes out of a premium for us. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Rick to go through the rest of it, and then as questions come up, I can address this. Thanks.
Good evening, council. I'm going to kind of run through this and then open it up for questions that you might have on the ordinance revisions. There's 3 major changes that we discussed here in the memo. The big one is, like Chris mentioned, we're proposing a 2-foot increase from 1 foot to 2 foot for that elevation sheet from the base flood elevation. The benefits are, again, to improve protection of future flood events. Additional redirection and also reduction in the National Flood Insurance Program premiums roughly 10 to 20%. So should be a reduction in premiums. And greater resilience against changing rainfall patterns and flood risks. Our top 10 storm events have happened this century. So it's only gonna get worse. The second big one was establishing compensatory storage requirements, and what that means is that, you know, you fill a foot, you gotta excavate a foot, you gotta get the volume back out. So if you put 100 cubic yards in, you gotta remove 100 yards, and it's gotta be connected to the floodway. So that wasn't in there before. I've kind of strengthened the floodplain administration inspection and enforcement. That was kind of a suggestion by SEMA. A lot of agencies don't do that, and then you don't have the teeth to enforce the code you need to. So some of those details are in there. And this presentation tonight, this isn't accepting the you know, ordinance, it's just a proposal. It's gotta be advertised for at least 20 days, open to a public hearing. And then decided on the council. Questions? I mean, a lot of details of this.
A couple questions. Going back to the first one, with the 1 foot above base flood elevation. What's that do to the first floor height? Requirement that we currently have, because how's that have the effect on that?
First floor height? So this is based on like the elevation of the lowest point of your building.
Right, so if we're building a new residence. I'm not a builder, I don't know anything about this, but I just know that there's first floor height requirements. And so now if we're increasing this from 1 foot to 2 feet, does that have any effect? It may have no effect, I just don't know.
It may not, it depends on what your property is.
So it could have an effect, that's what you're saying.
Yes, it could.
Okay, and I think so, all right, so that could be, that means we have to rewrite more additions to the code then if that's.
What I'll add is that it's your lowest sill elevation or your lowest, where water can get in. So if you have a basement door, per se, that would have to be a foot higher based on this proposed change. So in the design of the home, likely that's gonna raise that 1 foot higher. So that is a concern that we have to work through.
What about window wells for the fire to get in and out for basements? Same thing.
Same thing, so if it's not a walkout, that would be your lowest sill.
Okay.
Yep.
Because the door well would be lowest,
Yes.
so it's literally whatever that lowest.
Whatever
opening.
that lowest opening is that flood water can get into.
Would that prevent basements then in a flood zone?
No, so it doesn't account for like a floor drain or sanitary drains that are in the basement floor. It's only for lowest sill, that's that water, flood water can get into.
Although, back to Tuesday night's discussions, are all of these literally sitting on, they're clearly probably sitting on the water table, right? When we talk about stormwater,
Right,
right?
yeah.
I don't
So
know, that's.
that would be
So
my.
some not.
Some.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
And-
It all depends on what the water table is going to be in the area. So, and then different times of the year, water table is higher and lower.
Yeah, we talked to one of the builders after the stormwater, and they said they've done, so Sterling Engineering has done tests in 8 of their locations and have in Kirkwood, and have not found any groundwater within an 8-foot basement.
But these are all subject to the maps though, right, Chris? I mean, this is just like wherever those zones are, you only got 10% within the city. So,
Yes, so I'm gonna go over some of the the most prominent locations where we have floodplain. So we have floodplain along Leffingwell in front of the New Public Works property, along Grand, up on let's see, Avery Court, that's what I was thinking of, Avery Court. So those are the primary spaces we have that line, so it's not everywhere in Kirkwood.
All right, so if we do something like this, will this raise the cost of building a new home? You want to bring new dirt in and raise it, that costs more money?
Essentially, yes.
Okay,
But-
you know, because one of the issues I have with all this we're trying to do is we're increasing the costs of new homes in Kirkwood. At the same time, we're talking out the other side of our mouth, saying housing is not affordable. Well, it's because of all the new requirements we're posing on these guys. That's, can't have your cake and eat it too. That's the requirements, the permits, the BMPs, now this. But anyway, moving on to number 2, the storage requirements for floodplain fill. Can you give me an example of where this is maybe an issue? That there's been land dirt taken out and not been replaced?
Not anywhere in Kirkwood. So this is a requirement or proposed change from SEMA. So SEMA has a template ordinance that they give the cities. And so this is one of the sections they suggested to put in. And this goes to, decreasing flood heights during flood events so that, we don't get, increased floods throughout regionally.
Right, but to your knowledge, we haven't had any situations where people have, I guess, removed dirt and not filled it back in. Was that what I understand this to be, is it requires any dirt that's taken out then to be replaced with one-on-one basis?
Yeah, so anytime it's really when you fill in. So when you fill in or build up an area, you need to excavate a different area, so it's.
You're not changing the elevation or the
So
thing.
you balance it.
Yeah, so you balance.
Oh.
So more likely it's isn't it, Chris, where you're putting more fill into it, it's that you're raising it on maybe your downstream properties or whatever, you gotta take that amount out, so you don't have that effect. So you have a 0 effect.
This would be on any new residential and commercial property?
So this would only be if the property is located in a floodplain.
Which I talked about, which is great and the.
Right.
But so if somebody wants to add an addition, it's just new. Development, it's not any addition or anything of a property inside the floodplain.
If that addition is within inside the floodplain, it would,
So
this would apply.
If you're adding it,
Right.
but if you're doing a slab on grade, that doesn't affect,
Wouldn't change.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
so we're going to ask them to increase from 1 foot to 2 foot. And because we're asking them to increase to 2 foot, the second provision then comes into place. That they then need to dig a hole that prevents their increased elevation water from running down to somebody else's home. Is that true? 1 and 2 are related in that way?
It could be, I mean, they don't necessarily have to be all the time.
And you said at this time, you don't know of anywhere that this has happened in Kirkwood. So I'm always, why are we having ordinances in Kirkwood if it's never happened before? But we're likely to make it happen because we're gonna increase the freeboard an extra foot.
Increasing the freeboard board would most likely force that structure up and not
Yes.
down and creating more.
Which is why then we need to have number 2 because we have number 1.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
no, because we could totally strike 2 and keep 1.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Well, not yet, but that's on me for not knowing quite enough about flood management, wastewater, or need water and all of that right now. It seems like everybody else understands that better. So that's just my lack of it.
I also have a list of communities that have adopted the 2 foot.
That would be helpful, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you read?
You know,
those?
Yeah, Town and Country, Berkeley, Frontenac, Fenton, Woodson Terrace, Chesterfield, University City, Wildwood. And there's a lot more, there's 60 of them throughout the state.
Oh, wow.
So it's not an uncommon thing.
In 3. Expands the duties of the floodplain administrator, is that you for us right now?
It used to be the building commissioner, so it's
Okay.
kind of a new duty.
Well, so our current ordinance states that the building commissioner is responsible, is the floodplain administrator. So with this change, with this ordinance change, we're having that duty assigned to the city.
Gotcha.
And we're doing that because we're going from a building commissioner to an engineer. So that there's more knowledge there with an engineer.
Yeah, so it's, you know, going through the training of
Right.
going through SEMA.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I picked up out of this, and I just want to make sure I understand clearly. One of the things that the, FEMA and SEMA are encouraging us to do is to do this and put it in code so that we can reduce the homeowner and property owner's potential insurance. Is that correct?
Right.
By 10 to 20%?
Yes.
And potentially not being able to get insurance or a loan, because the banks would see that as a risk of being in the floodplain and not following FEMA or SEMA's.
Latest.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct,
Yeah.
so if I'm a homeowner or I'm building commercial property. And I decide to disregard or not build to that. I may not risk my loan and I may risk insurance.
Yeah, probably end up paying 20.
Which I guess also is a good indication of why we need to put these in place.
So
I think when we think about the impact to homeowners, right? I'm looking at it from if I am gonna borrow money in order to build a new commercial property or build a home. My cost for that loan could be higher, because the risk is higher to the person loaning the money. And the insurance companies, Justin might be able to address this better, they're becoming less risk tolerant, right? Especially with something around flooding. Therefore, if we allow homeowner to build a home in floodplain that is gonna flood potentially at a 500-year, which the 100 years happening more frequently, 500-year, well, it hasn't happened, and we just heard how while even we're having stormwater issues, which could exacerbate the situation and be considered flooding, correct? So if it's stormwater that due to additional infill builds, that could create additional flooding issues, even though if it's not a large rain event, but if the stormwater fails, that's still considered flooding, correct?
Yes, and that could still be covered under a flood insurance.
So
Policy.
we already know we have a strained stormwater system. And so as we add more infill, we're increasing the likelihood that anybody who builds in those areas, and we heard people today talk about that they live in the area where the yards are flooding and those types of things. So to me, that risk that is happening, not even in floodplain areas because of the stormwater issues, actually are the bigger risk for a homeowner.
I would say that affects more residents of Kirkwood.
Right.
And
By having
by
this
having this,
in, then we get designated as a community who is putting emphasis on that and helps reduce all of floodplain or flood insurance risk, right?
Would that, or would that affect everybody's flood insurance? If I have it on my property that's not one of these flood plains? Nobody in my neighborhood has to implement any of these three things. Why would that affect my flood insurance?
I'm not the one to
Because-
answer the actuary
Right.
pieces, but I'm not aware of the
Suggestions?
I don't need to put it on in mine or.
No, but I think that that would be a question to understand for the,
I mean, I
Citizens
agree
as
with
a
you,
whole.
this is still water, and I think that's the timeliness of it, is that we did discuss stormwater the other night, now we're talking floodwater. So I think the timeliness of making sure we put a good package together for all of it, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And this right now would affect 10.6% of our people, about 1,000 spots.
which is.
Oh,
significant.
yes.
I mean, that's a
We're
significant
not
impact,
minimizing any of it.
and it's an area that's being developed, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of,
Some,
some,
yeah, Avery and.
yeah,
Definitely.
right, like, that's an area that we're seeing more empty lots that could be developed.
I have a couple of other questions if I may, ma'am. So you told us 6 to 7 inches of rain is a storm of 100 years? What's the 500-year storm?
That much I don't know, it would be,
And then,
typically it's 5 times that amount, but.
all right. And then have these numbers been recently updated? You know, we are hearing of 100-year storms happening every 7 years. So I believe with the precipitation and the alteration in what's happening in climate, are these numbers even still valid?
The maps, I just wanna make this comment too. We have to still use the maps that are specified in the ordinance. They have new ones that are under revision. That are probably gonna come out and be formally approved in about 6 months. And those kind of change the floodplain.
And that might alter what storms of 100 years for 500 years really are.
It could slightly.
Yeah, okay.
Would it alter what we're considering at all? Would it alter these revisions that we're considering?
No.
No,
Well, we do have to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but we have to update our ordinance every time there is a new effective map.
oh,
And so the last effective map, I believe, was 2015. So, you know, the last effective is 11 years ago, and they're supposed to come out with one in 6 months.
so are you anticipating that we'll be looking at changing this again in 6 months then?
So, yeah, we would have to change it, unless the council wants to, you know, hold on this and wait for that map amendment to be effective, which could be, could even be longer, but so,
Yeah.
but it's not, that's probably not, it's not recommended.
Okay, not recommended.
Would we just re-adopt the same thing perhaps?
So that would be, yeah, that would be the only change in the ordinance.
Is what a storm of 100 or 500 years would be.
So it's not changing the calculation of what a 500 or 100-year storm is. It's changing where the floodplain is on the effective map.
Actual properties.
Justin, did you have something?
Actual overlay.
Well, so that was part of my question, so. And I wanna make it clear, because I think the timing of this could be very interesting. We could adopt this in 6 months, they expand the areas, right? That's what I'm hearing, that they could expand the floodplain areas.
We already know, we have a preliminary map,
Okay,
and so that's been out for several years.
so how long do you, or how much? How many more parcels do you think will be impacted? That change?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, that's when we could report.
Okay, but your calculations so far have been in the previous map. Of that 10.6%, 1,000 parcels.
And just for my clarification more than anything else, so I'm talking about what storm maps are, you're talking about floodplain maps.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm
Yes.
on the same conversation you're having, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Do you need anything from us further at this point?
I think, you know, I think we've got some homework to do and we'll come back, to the council, before it comes back to a public hearing.
Mayor. Can I ask that, because this is so complicated, that kind of an FAQ be created to just help the citizens understand some of these terms, some of the implications that are in more of a maybe tested on someone who's not, you know, as technical and knowing of this, to help us make sure that we all are communicating in simpler ways the importance or why we would consider this.
And Chris, when you say public hearing, you mean a public hearing in council?
That's correct.
Yeah, something else.
And then I'll ask public hearing versus open house. Versus town hall meeting, and I now have a new definition of a town hall meeting.
We're talking public hearing.
Public hearing that you have to publish.
I guess in a small way, I'm wondering if. A town hall meeting or an open house may be as or more. Educational for our citizens. I'm just pondering that.
Yeah, we can definitely look into an open house.
Yeah. That's the way I was,
So that
I think that would be helpful.
a one-on-one discussions can
Yep.
happen.
Yeah.
With specific people that are interested.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Okay, now we are going into some sunshine training that Jack is going to convene for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The mayor and Darren asked that I provide just an overview of the sunshine law. This is a training we probably all had before. So I'm just gonna talk generally about what the sunshine law is and what it requires and allows. If you have questions, we can talk about those following my presentation. So the sunshine law, as you all know, is Missouri's law that relates to public access to public records, public meetings, and then votes of government bodies. Generally, under the sunshine law, there's a presumption that the records, meetings, and votes are open, but the sunshine law provides that certain things can be closed. And it provides a list under 610.021 of those provisions of when records or meetings or votes might be closed. There is also a section in section 610.100, which relates more to police records specifically. And so anytime there's a sunshine law request or looking at what you're doing under the sunshine law, you have to look at all of those, a number of different provisions, those being two of them when you're considering whether a record is closed. So talking about just what is a public meeting, I'll start there. A public meeting is generally anywhere where there's a quorum of the public body, where public business is being discussed. And that does not necessarily mean that it has to be formal, does not necessarily mean that any votes have to be taken. It's just that if there is a quorum of the public body discussing public business, then it can be a public meeting. So when you are out having dinner, if there is a quorum, you want to be careful not to have conversations about public business during those times. But it doesn't mean you can't go to dinner. It just means when you go to dinner, don't discuss public business at that time. Also, you can discuss, council members and members of public bodies can discuss things like ministerial things, like when is that meeting going to be, or we're going to have council members appear at the parade. Are you interested in being on the float? You know, those are ministerial. Those are not discussions of public business. So those would not be public meetings. So what else can we, excuse me, a public meeting? Your correspondence, emails, for example, if you are having an email discussion with 4 or more council members, that can also, if it's a quorum, could constitute public business. So you want to make sure council members, public body members, should make sure that they are not discussing public business in emails with 4 or more members. If they did, then it would be public meeting, and the public meeting requirements would apply. That's having an agenda, announcing when the meeting is going to be, how the public can attend, for example. And since you can't do that via email, we try not to have those discussions via email. Let's see. I'll just note that for the city purposes, for example, the city council obviously is a board or commission, but so are all of our appointed boards and commissions. So planning and zoning, the Board of Adjustment, the Human Services Commission, all of those are subject to the Sunshine Law. And so they also have the requirement that they post notice of their meetings and they take minutes of those meetings, etc. So just because you're not the city council doesn't mean you're not a body of the city that would be required to follow the Sunshine Law requirements. As far as what happens at public meetings, the items should be an agenda item. So that the public is aware of what you're going to be talking about at that meeting. Under the Sunshine Law, agendas have to be posted at least 24 hours ahead of the date and time of the meeting. And the agenda has to include the time, place, date, and the tentative agenda in a manner reasonably calculated to advise the public of matters to be considered. Now, there is an exception where you could have a change within 24 hours if there's good cause, where it's impossible or impractical to state on the record or in the agenda what is going to be discussed. Emergencies are one such area where you may not even know that there's something to discuss until 1 hour before the meeting, for example. If you're going to allow public comment or have public hearings, those are also included on the agenda as agenda items. Just because an agenda is posted doesn't mean that it can't change. As long as those changes are generally within the 24 hours unless the exception occurs. And our clerk Lori actually does a great job of posting the agenda, and then if there are changes, she'll make very clear that this is an amended agenda and note the time and place that it was posted before it goes up. Public meetings, generally speaking, can be recorded by the public. But closed meetings are closed and cannot. That being said, the city council or any public body can have, rules and regulations of or guidelines of how and when the public recordings can happen. Under the Sunshine Law, you can set guidelines if you would like. Action taken by council is under the Sunshine Law. It all has to happen via a vote. And then the vote is recorded in the meeting minutes. If a council member is not physically present, generally speaking, they cannot vote on an item unless an exception applies. Under the Sunshine Law, there are generally two exceptions. One is if the member is participating via video conferencing, and the second is in an emergency of the public body. Excuse me. When there's a quorum of the body physically present, then others could participate via electronic means. That's something different than video conferencing. So like you're on the phone, for example. And then we also state nature of the emergency within the votes related to closed meetings are all via roll call. So your vote to go into a closed meeting, your vote to go out of the closed meeting, and votes within the closed session are generally all by roll call. Just like you need an agenda and topics to be on the agenda for your open meeting, your subjects that you discuss in the closed session should also be items that are subjects that were intended to be discussed in the closed meeting, and should try to stick to those topics and not wander around. Let's see. And then I can just go through some of the examples of where meetings might be closed. I'm sure that all of you have experienced some of this or might have examples as well. But one example is where we're talking about employees. Not all matters involving employees have to be closed, but if you're talking about personal information of the employee, hiring, firing, disciplining, for example, those are all in closed session. If you're talking about elected officials though, or committee members, they're not employees of the city. So we couldn't use that exception that for employee matters to close the meeting. Similarly, real estate matters can generally be closed, but that's where public knowledge of the transaction might adversely affect the legal consideration. Therefore, in other words, if the fact that the public knows that some going to happen, or there are terms, or the price are being discussed, and that might impact a city's ability to negotiate the terms of that agreement, or whatever the city is trying to do with respect to that real property, the sunshine law allows those to be closed. Those are just two examples. There are more that we can talk about. So for example, legal actions, we talked about real estate, contract negotiations, similar to the real estate matters, but contract negotiations can also be closed, similar reasons for business purposes, so that, you know, if you're negotiating with one party that, you know, their competitors out in the public aren't able to come in and undercut, you know, just one example. Also, any other records that are protected from disclosure by law can be closed. So for example, social security numbers are closed. So if you're asking for a record that has a social security number on it, or medical records that are in the city's hands, those are records that are otherwise beyond the sunshine law, subject to closure. And so the city will, if those are topics in the public record, for example, those are items that will be redacted before it's produced. Just because something is done in a closed meeting doesn't mean it always stays closed. So for example, when we're talking about employees, if there is a vote on hiring, firing, or disciplining an employee, the final vote on that action becomes public within after 72 hours. If there was a lawsuit that is settled, for example, the settlement, the vote, and the minutes related to that would be public records after the settlement agreement is final. With respect to leasing and the sale of real estate, if the city ended up selling a property and there was a contract that was signed and the sale was closed, then that contract would be the minutes and documents related to that could become open records. Those are just a few examples for you. Most of the provisions in the sunshine law don't have that, but then it becomes public when, but some of them do, and those are a couple of the examples. So what is a public record generally? So outside of the meeting context, you know, what are public records? That might include emails, that might include memos or notes from staff, it would include the packets from council meeting night, it would include documents that were prepared for the council by a consultant, for example, and it would include, I already mentioned this, email correspondence between yourselves and constituents, etc. Let's see. With respect to who can make a sunshine law request, there's not really a limit on who can do that. Any member of the public can do it. They don't have to live in the city. They don't have to tell you why they want the documents. They just have to make the request, and then the city can charge, or at least they can charge or they can pay for providing those records. And Lori, again, our clerk, handles all of that. And so all of the requests go through the city clerk. And she responds to each of those requests. When there is a request, generally speaking, the city has to at least respond to the request within 3 days. It doesn't necessarily mean the city has to actually provide records. If it will take more time to obtain or collect the documents that are being requested, but the city clerk will let the requester know why it's going to take more than 3 days. Let's see. If there is a record and part of the record is exempt and part of it is open, we always have to provide what's open, and we just redact what's exempt. And again, the custodian of record is in charge of doing that. Under the sunshine law, there are penalties for not following the sunshine law. There is a distinction between whether it's a knowing violation or a purposeful violation, but the violation does require that it really be knowing or purposeful. That being said, that would be to impose a fine. If there was a vote, for example, in a closed meeting, and that vote was challenged, then a court might be able to void that vote without there being sort of a knowing or purposeful finding. Let's see. Also, the member of the public body is not liable if they have followed a reasonable policy adopted by the body pursuant to the sunshine law. That is just a general broad overview of the sunshine law and how it operates. That's the close of my presentation for today.
Good, thank you. Any questions?
I'm not sure this will be considered questions versus comments, and I appreciate that I'm not looking for answers versus raising concerns. So I have concerns that Kirkwood goes into closed sessions more often than we should. And this is my opportunity to voice that. I appreciate how tedious record keeping can be, Lori, our clerk. Just in my looking at what was brought up, hiring, firing. Information should be made available to the public within 72 hours. And we've had 2 substantial changes in personnel, and I'm not sure that those records were available in 72 hours. And I'm only questioning right now because of the tediousness of truly going back and looking, just even in the 2 months I've been here, you know, running back and forth between where I'm keeping my minutes and paperwork and documents and packets to try to connect all of those dots is laborious. And so I can only imagine the challenge that our clerk has in keeping track of all of this. Meetings that we just heard that if something becomes public, that gets to be posted. But if it's a meeting where something isn't public yet, that needs to be redacted. I've mentioned a concern I had over the selection of the contract at the Leffingwell property, that I did not understand why that was a closed session. We were reviewing bids and choosing a bid. It wasn't contract negotiations. We had a little bit of a conversation about this one or that one, but it really wasn't about the bid. They weren't sealed. By that time, they were open. I have a question about when KAA purchased city property. And I appreciate the negotiations might have been closed, but I'm not fully understanding, and no, I wasn't on council yet. Did we sell public property? And if we did, why wasn't that available for the highest bidder? Why was that a closed session situation? It may, you all may know something I don't know, but that's a concern that I have. Some questions that might be more appropriate later is the daisy chain process. If an individual emails us and we reply all, is that part of sunshine that we need to be mindful of inside of an email chain that we're all on? If a constituent emails all of us, I think even Councilman Schaefer talked about, oh, I'll handle this one. So if any one of us replies all to the person who's asked a question, I believe that puts us in violation that it's included a quorum of the council. And so I think policies and procedures for that will probably be appropriate. So I have concerns about some of these things, and the amount of time it would take me to check seems incredibly tedious. And so I just want to raise that one, that my concern is that we close more often than we should. Thank you.
I just would like to ask a clarifying question, Jackie. You mentioned emails. But does it include any electronic communication, including text, chats, and so chats in Nextdoor, or if you're on a Facebook chain, like things like that?
I will say that's a gray area that the sunshine law doesn't explicitly speak to. But it's something that we can certainly talk about on specifics.
So electronic is specific around email.
I mean, it discusses electronic, let's see. I'll get back.
It was one of those that in previous trainings with you at the state level and at the municipal league, I took away that it included text. And so when you didn't say that, I was like, oh, wait a minute, is there a difference?
No, it's
So,
public records is any record, whether written or electronically stored.
got it. So that would be almost any, in my understanding, it like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So in response to what you were asking about, I would like clarification on that as well. If it comes to all of us and I respond, is that's, and everybody can see it. I'm not including everybody. But I did that because the mayor, we had done that prior. And it was just questions that came up. And so whoever had the knowledge, like with scouting or with sewer laterals or stuff like that. Well, I was at that point. So, and that's fine, I had no problem doing that. And everybody took their turn, so that's how that all started, so you know, there was no malice there.
No, it occurred to me that that seemed to be the way for you to say, I got this one.
Correct.
That you handled it, that it did not become a situation where all of us, where a quorum was on that responsive email. No, I appreciated that
Okay,
and thought
that's
that
just for
felt like
clarification, yeah,
the way you would avoid having a quorum and one of us replying all to answer the question.
sure.
But only if everybody's not included in the reply, right?
Generally, but we can talk about that more.
Okay.
Can I ask another question, you, Jake? So you use the term, I'm not an attorney, I know there's a couple here. So nothing works as purposeful. Can you explain the two for me? So you bring it down to my level so I understand.
As I sit here, I don't think there are definitions within the sunshine law. So as I sit here, I can't tell you how courts have interpreted that,
Okay,
but I can get.
can you just shoot me something so that I understand? Just, you know, it's just hard. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay. We need to go into closed session. May I have a motion?
Motion,
Reminder, please, during the motion to go into close, you'll read the section off of the agenda as to why we're going into close.
our city clerk do that?
Whoever makes the motion will state what their motion is.
I make a motion to close the meeting pursuant to RSMO chapter 610.20.021, 1 legal and approval of closed session minutes and 12 contract negotiations.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
There we go.
Any question or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Gibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Burkett.
Yes.
Councilmember Councilmember Jackson is absent. All right. Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yes.
Now if we can take